a seat. The doctor will see you in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you look wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
You know,
so do you. I love that shirt.
Thank you, thank you. 90th birthday this year.
Your 90th?
What, exactly? This is what my week has been like.
We have fun together.
We do. It was fun. I have a copy of your book when it came out, and you signed it for me. But this edition, in paperback, has something that the first one didn't have.
Because
New York Times bestseller.
New York Times bestseller. Yeah. The New York Times bestseller list in the first week. So the hard copy, came out, HarperCollins, and then they have to wait and see how the sales go, and then they publish the paperback. So yeah, that was quite a surprise and quite an honor to have a New York Times best-selling book, a memoir. It was a tough thing to do, though, to write a memoir. I waited 40-something years until I had carved out my own life, my own career, had something to talk about other than just my wonderful years with Elvis. So I think it was important to do that.
It was interesting what you said the other night when we were talking, that you had been a part of a couple of lives that you couldn't share really your story until they shared their story.
Bruce, specifically, yes, because the reason I divorced Bruce Jenner was because he came to me 40 years ago and said, I have this dilemma. I have something I need to tell you. And I thought he was going to tell me he had had an affair, which would have been the good news. I'm going to go over that one. But instead, he told me that he was disenfranchised, basically, in his own body, that he felt like he was a woman. He had always felt that his entire life. One of the reasons he won the Olympics and was so impressive in his performances because he was running so hard and fast and trying so hard to escape that feeling and to prove the masculinity, and of course he did. But he always was conflicted his entire life. So when he came to me and told me that, I said, listen, we went to therapy for a long time, and then it was not going to change. I'll keep your secret. I will be your friend. I will waive child support. I'll waive alimony. You do what you need to do, and I'll be here as a support for you, but I don't want to be married to you anymore. So that's the reason I divorced him all those years ago. And he actually, it's in the book, but he actually went through 5 years of hormone therapy and began the transition years ago. And then he just sort of chickened out because he thought, look, I'm Bruce Jenner, what am I going to do now? And he met Kris Kardashian, and then they got married. And when he told me he was getting married, I was thrilled because I thought at least my sons would have this visage of a masculine role model. That didn't work out very well either, but no, it's so strange because Elvis and I were watching the '76 Olympics together. We're actually sitting in bed, and we had been watching the Olympics with, a lot of enthusiasm. Elvis was very patriotic. So we're pulling for all the American athletes, and we're watching this incredible athlete, Bruce Jenner, just dominate the decathlon. And we're cheering him on, and he wins the decathlon, and we're all excited. He's waving the American flag, and Elvis said, honey, you know I'm not gay, don't you? I said, I think I figured that out by now. This is 1976. I said, yeah, I think I know that by now. And he said, but that guy is a good-looking guy, isn't he? I said, he sure is. I'm going to marry him one day. I was just teasing him. So he laughed, and we laughed, and it was, be careful what you wish for, or what you. But one of the main reasons that I left Elvis, that I broke up with him, is because I wanted a normal life. I wanted to have children. I knew I always wanted to be a mom, and I thought I'll never have a normal life in this rock and roll world. So it was one of the main reasons I broke up with him. And after I met Bruce Jenner in 1979, Elvis and I broke up at the very end of '76. I met Bruce Jenner in 1979, and I thought I had my perfect normal life. So it was normal for
a little thing called life.
A little thing called life. This is actually a lyric that I wrote, that Aaron Neville recorded this song, A Little Thing Called Life. And the publisher said, let's put poetry between each, some set of your lyrics between each chapter to kind of go along with what I had gone through in the, go along with my experience, in the preceding chapter. There would be a set of lyrics that would sort of coincide with my experience.
You were telling me last night too that You have to license your own words.
Yeah, I own my own publishing. Thank God for my music attorney all those years ago. He structured a deal for me because usually the record company will own your publishing for its perpetuity. And he structured a deal so that I got all my publishing back after 15 years. So Brandon Brody, my son's, Brandon Brody Music, owns all of my publishing. So even though I own it, I had to get clearance from the record companies of the artists that had performed the songs and the co-writers to publish the lyrics between each chapter. And it was kind of a last minute deal, so it was, panic time. How am I gonna get clearance for all of that? And clearance for photos, and even the ones that I owed, or that Jeannie LeMay took a lot of the photos.
And you had written, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but this Jodie Foster, Mark Harmon film. That's just such a wonderful song.
And When She Danced.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
I just saw that movie the other night, and I waited for that, because it's at the end when he takes her ashes, then he's throwing them off the pier. And they get on a seagull, and they fly.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. But David, actually my ex-husband David Foster, did the soundtrack. It's just absolutely beautiful. He's a musical genius. And that song, we wrote it together. He wrote the music, and David doesn't write lyrics. And so he wrote the music, and I structured the lyric around the music. And there's a line that says, "And when she danced, I lost my innocence. I loved her then, I always will." And he said, you gotta lose that word innocence. I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Non-lyric writer?" Stick to the music. No, but he said, "You can't sing innocence." I said, "Yeah, of course it sings beautifully in the context of music." And he said, no, you gotta change that. I said, well, just leave it in and just see how Marilyn Martin does. She was the girl singer. And she sang it, and she said, "I just gotta stop. I gotta tell you how beautiful that word innocence is. And it sings so effortlessly." I was like, see? Never argue with a woman.
And you were writing poetry even when you were with Elvis, though.
Yeah.
Those words were always there.
Yeah. I started writing poetry when I was 9 years old. It was just something that I did for my family. I'd write little poems to my daddy, Happy Father's Day, to my mom, for birthday and Mother's Day and things like that. So I always wrote poetry. I think I've told you this story before. I actually got baptized. I grew up here in the South in Memphis. It's a city of churches, and we all had this strong religious fervor. One of the things too that Elvis and I had in common is that we both shared strong religious beliefs. So I got baptized when I was 9, and I felt that was God's gift to me, that I was sort of anointed with this talent, if you will, or this ability to write poetry. So I've been writing since I was 9 years old, and I wrote love sonnets to Elvis, and he would say, "Honey, this is beautiful. Let me have someone put some music to this, and I'll record it." And in my naivete and stupidity, I would say, "No, this is personal between you and me. This is just intimate between us." But had I known then about, how it would have been so wonderful to have his voice singing my words today. But I just have to imagine it. It was also meant to be because he knew that I wasn't there to promote my career or to, capitalize on the relationship by having him sing my songs, and so that it worked out okay.
To have him sing your words and to have the publishing on that.
There is that.
Yeah.
The royalties.
Well, it's a point that we heard the other night. Don Schlitz, a friend of yours, was here for one of the tours, and Don Schlitz has written a little song called "The Gambler," and "Forever and Ever Amen." So he's got nice mailbox money coming in.
Yeah, I like that mailbox money.
Yeah, that was a GK thing.
But it's that passive income, and thank God the music industry was what it was when I was doing most of my writing, because I have nothing from The Bodyguard. I was nominated for an Academy Award and a Grammy, and that's when music made money because people had to buy it. Now everything is streaming, and so songwriters and musicians don't make as much money. The touring and the merchandise is what they live on now.
If you see a bump every January from Airplay in December for Grown Up Christmas List by Kelly Clarkson, it's my radio station in Tupelo, because we go all Christmas music.
I
The
love it.
entire month of
Thank you.
December, and that's one of my
Is that the one you play?
That's my rotation.
Kelly Clarkson is probably my favorite version as well, but so many people have covered that song. It's been such a blessing in my life. David wrote the music, and we were on our boat in August up in British Columbia, and the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company, wanted us to do a little Christmas special, and so they asked us to write a few original Christmas songs. And he's at his keyboard on the boat, and I said, you know, I want the lyric to be something more than, you know, snow and jingle bells and Santa Claus, and I want it to have a real altruistic meaning. I would like it to be about, you know, a wish for the world. And that's where I got the lyric, no more lives torn apart, that wars would never start, and that time would heal all hearts, that everyone would have a friend, and right would always win, and love would never end. This is my grown-up Christmas list. So it's a list, you know, not for myself, but for the world in need. And it really hit the mark because Amy Grant, Natalie Cole, Barbra Streisand, Michael Bublé, like so many people have covered that song. And yes, I do get the bigger check the next quarter.
I'm going to add all those other versions to my playlist.
Please do,
So,
because they're
my
quite
grown-up
lovely.
Christmas playlist.
Thank you. I like it. You could, you know, Natalie Cole was the first person to record the song. She was a very, very dear friend of mine, and she was the first person to record that song. And then Barbra Streisand loved it, she recorded it. Even Aretha Franklin recorded that song.
Yeah, yeah. With your songwriting, and I didn't bring this up the other day when Don was there, and I should have, but Kenny Rogers was really a part of kind of pushing you forward to say, no, you're good at this.
He absolutely was. Kenny Marianne was on Hee Haw the 15 years that I was on Hee Haw. I was the new girl. You know, the show was on the air for 25 years, but they brought me on after 10 years, and Marianne was a regular on the show. And so I would see Kenny and Marianne often in Nashville, and we became best friends. Like, they lived in Westwood, and I lived in the area. I would go over to their house in the evening, have dinner with them. Marianne and I would play Scrabble, and so we were super close friends. And David Briggs, God rest his soul, he just passed away. We remained friends for all these years. But David Briggs had put some music to one of my lyrics, and he said, you know, you're a lyricist. And I said, no, I just write poetry. And he said, no, you're a lyricist, this is beautiful, I'm gonna put some music to it. And Steve Sanders from the Oak Ridge Boys, he was the original lead singer in the Oak Ridge Boys, he did the demo, and David Briggs sent me the little cassette. That's how we used to write back then, a little cassette. And I went over to their house, Kenny and Marianne's house, for dinner and Scrabble. And I said, hey, Kenny, I have this song I want you to hear. He said, oh my God, not you too. And he was at the height of his career. He had just had Lucille out. And I guess I was so naive about it. I didn't know that people pitched songs and, you know, they tried to get him to record their songs. And I said, what do you mean, me too? And he said, everybody's pitching songs to me. And I said, no, I just want you to listen to it. Tell me what you think about it. He said, all right. He was very indulgent. You know, I'll give you a little critique on this. I said, that's all I'm asking for. He took it back to his dressing room, and he came back a few minutes later, and he said, do you want me to give you an honest criticism on this? And I said, yeah, that's all I want. He said, this is one of the prettiest songs I've ever heard. Do you have any more? I'd like to record it. I went, wow, okay. So Marianne said, here, you gotta buy these earrings with the royalty that you're gonna get. I need bigger diamonds, you can have these. And that was my first recording of a song that I had written, and Kenny Rogers did this song called Our Perfect Song, and it's on the Heart of the Matter album. So Kenny was very instrumental in getting me started. Yeah, he was a big believer. And he actually recorded something shortly before he died called, Not Home Is Where the Hurt Is, that's another song I wrote. It's called Love Don't Live Here Anymore. And Kenny recorded that song, it's really pretty.
Yeah. I was thinking about, we have a thing during our Christmas song playlist. Every hour from 6 to 10, I have a thing called Yule Duel. And Yule Duel.
Oh, that's cute.
And patent pending. And I take a Christmas song, and I play, on the half hour, I play 4 different versions. And then you go online and vote for your favorite version, and on Christmas Eve, we go commercial free, and we play all the winners of the Yule Duel. while you're wrapping your presents or opening presents on Christmas Eve or whatever. And so it's
That's
a big,
very clever.
Thank you very much. And I was just thinking as you were talking about all those people covering grown-up Christmas list, that the thing that I love about music and a song is how there can be 10 different versions that some may have piano as the lead, the guitar as the lead, the arrangements are different, but the words never change.
They better not.
Exactly. But
You have to get permission to change.
But like different ways that a song can be reinterpreted, and I'm thinking even the lyrics can be reinterpreted.
They could be, yeah, according to one's own perspective. But yeah, you do have to get permission to alter.
Yeah.
I've turned down people who sent me requests because I'm with Warner Chappell Music Publishing, and they administrate my catalog. And sometimes they will send me this company in China wants to do this song, but they're translating it, and they would send me the English translation. I'll say that doesn't sound like anything that the original meaning was. So no matter what the money is, it's like you have to maintain an integrity in your work. So I've turned down offers for people to record my music.
Okay, then turning to the integrity, there was a songwriter named Jim Weatherly from Pontotoc, Mississippi, right next to Tupelo, and he wrote a little song. He was friends with Lee Majors, and they played football all the time in California, like with that.
I'm friends with Lee Majors.
Exactly. Well, he was married to a young lady named Farrah back in the 70s, and Jim was over at their house one night, and she was getting packed at 10 o'clock at night. And he said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Well, I'm taking the midnight plane to Houston." And so he went, "This is a song, Midnight Plane to Houston." And they pitched it out, and Gladys Knight got it. And a month or two later, Jim said he's at his house, and his phone rings, and it's the producer of Gladys Knight. And he said, Gladys loves the song, but she would never take a plane to Houston, but she would take a train to Georgia.
I love that story. I never heard that story. Yeah. That's awesome.
And Jim Weatherly said, "You tell Gladys Knight she can take a bus to Utah." I was
Please record my song. Yeah, that's amazing. But it doesn't change the integrity.
No, yeah.
It just adds to the mystique, kind of a train to Georgia.
It does.
So, yeah.
It's even more mysterious.
Carol Bayer Sager is a friend of mine as well, and she tells a story about Peter Allen. She was on the phone with Peter Allen one night, and she was telling him about a flight that she had taken, and she said, I don't know, it was somewhere between the moon and New York City. And Peter said, "Oh, okay." And then he wrote the song, he wrote the lyric, and he called her and he said, "Carol, do I have to give you credit because I used that hook that you just, inadvertently threw out when we were talking?" And she said, "Yes, you have to give me credit because it's the whole, thrust of the song. It's the beauty of the song, caught between the moon and New York City."
And Burt Bacharach wrote the music.
Burt Bacharach wrote the music. Yeah, that was a great writing team as well.
Yeah. Words can mean many different things, and one of the things we've been talking about with Elvis, especially, we've got a thing coming up later this afternoon about the Sunset Boulevard album, which is a lot of recordings from the 70s, where though he wasn't a songwriter who would live experiences and write lyrics that reflect what he's going through, he found songs that said what he was feeling and going through. And during that time in the 70s, within a night or two, recording separate ways and always on my mind, telling Red, you guys are killing me with these songs, because they were so emotional for what he was going through. You tell this wonderful story, and it's in your book, about you never suggested songs, but there was one song, and it's on this new box set because it's during those sessions in LA, where you suggested a Pointer Sisters song that maybe he would feel.
Maybe he'd catch the drift.
Yeah.
No, when I first was with Elvis, I first met him, I was telling him about a song, "Welcome to My World," that had played at one of the beauty pageants I had won. And he said, "That's a beautiful song, I'm gonna record that," and he wanted to perform it at Aloha, so he did. So that was one, I didn't mean to suggest it, but he loved the song. And then later on in our relationship, when I was beginning to become disillusioned and again wanting a normal life, and having to deal with affairs and that kind of thing, I got this song, Fairy Tale, and there's a line that says, I've tried my best to love you, now I'm walking out the door. So I was trying to give him a little hint, shape up or I'm shipping out. But he really didn't get the message, I think, that I was trying to deliver, but he did record the song, and he loved it. And you know, Elvis was a deeply feeling, empathetic person. He loved sad songs. He loved sad songs like Softly, I Will Leave You Softly. He loved that song. He loved Mario Lanza, operatic. He loved a little song that he never recorded, but it was called Country Bumpkin. Have you ever heard that? And it was just such a gut-wrenching, sad song. He would listen to it, he and I would listen to it over and over, and he would cry because it was about a family losing their mother. So it was about him losing his mom. And he'd get big tears in his eyes, and we'd both go, oh, it's so sad. And we loved hearing and listening, and he loved singing sad songs. And he used to say, he had so many profundities when he would speak. One of the things he said was, there is great joy in sadness, because it also carves into the depth of your being. And it's so true. Even the Khalil Gibran, the prophet, says, the deeper the sorrow carves into the heart, the more joy it can contain, because it hollows you out, to feel more. So, and he recognized that. He was very philosophical. He was very well read, very bright. A lot of people don't know that, but he was a voracious reader and really studied all kinds of religions, and was a fascinating individual.
For this being an author's event, I started out here with just books about Elvis, a biography about him, or as a subject in a memoir, autobiography by someone. That he's in over 3,000 books, and all the different sides of this person. The musicians that were with him, James and Ronnie and all those guys, they saw a side of him on stage. The Mafia saw a side of him when they were the guys hanging out, and you saw another side. That really not a lot of people saw.
Maybe two.
Yeah.
Maybe two people ever, 2 or 3. Because the old adage, you don't really know someone unless you live with them. And when you do live with them 24/7, you take your meals with them, you sleep with them, you wake up to them, you go to sleep, say goodnight to them, you're in a loving relationship. You see their fallibility, you see their vulnerability, you see their sensitivities, insecurities. I knew every facet of his being. I absolutely felt that during the time that I was with him, that I knew him better than anyone on the planet knew him. Because he would confide in me. When you're living that intimately together, you sit in the middle of the bed and you talk for hours. And especially our lives were such that we were sequestered very often, just away from everyone, ostracized kind of. But he liked to be alone, and he liked to have his private time so that he could read and discuss what he had just read, and talk about his feelings and about any kind of philosophy that he had picked up and read. And he read the Bible a lot as well. So he was a very complicated person. I say this a lot, that he was in his simplicity, because he was a simple man in so many ways, but he was very complicated in that simplicity. And he was he had a duality in nature. He was very paradoxical. On the one hand, he could be like a little angel that dropped from heaven, and you just think, oh, this person is too good to be of this earth. He's angelic. And then in a moment, a flash of a moment, he could be the devil incarnate. When he was angry, and he had a flash temper like no one I've ever known. So he could, he had a duality of nature that was fascinating, but sometimes frightening too.
Yeah, and all the people around him. We were talking last night at Graceland. All the people around him that, not that he didn't go out some, but the world kind of whatever he wanted. You had a great line, the mountain.
Well, he had a great line, another great line that he had. He said, honey, I don't need to go out, I'll bring the mountain to Muhammad. I don't need to visit the mountain, I'll bring the mountain to Muhammad.
Yeah.
So he would bring the world to him. He would bring, shopping thing. He wanted to buy jewelry, Lowell Hayes would bring a big tray of jewelry and open it up for him, spread it out on the bed upstairs, and clothing, things like that. He had Bill Ballou and other people bring him items of clothing. peruse through, and he would choose what he wanted to wear. So yeah, he was a relatively lonely person in a lot of ways, even though he was surrounded by the same 13 guys all the time, and me. But he would say often, he said, honey, you know I'm an intensely lonely person. And I would try to counter that with, but honey, you know, look at all these beautiful fans you have. And we had this monitor in the bedroom that would show the gate. And I said, look at all those lovely people down there. They all love you. They're all here just to catch a glimpse of you. He said, I appreciate their love. He said, but they don't know the real me. They don't know what he called little Elvis. They don't know the little boy inside me like you do. They don't know the person that, you know, stays awake at night. They don't know, they know the Elvis Presley on the marquee. Yes. But I think in a way, he was wrong about that, because I think Elvis's fans are unique in that, yes, you love his music, you love the way he looked, you know, we all did. But I think that you also have dug deeper, and I think people, his fans, appreciate his generosity, his philanthropy, just his sensitivity, his kindness. I feel like the fans love him as much for that as for his music. They loved his humanity. I wish he could have been more aware of that, to feel less lonely, you know, to feel more connected, and to know that he was seen beyond Elvis Presley on the marquee.
The music brought us to him, but then we wanted to know as much as we could.
And still today.
And still do. And we see that side of him in your book. And thank you so much. Thanks for spending the week with me.
I've enjoyed you so much. How great is this man? He's awesome. He does an amazing job. He's well-versed in everything that you do. Let's praise you for just a minute.
Okay.
Do you mind?
No, I got time.
He's always, he's so amiable, he's so generous of spirit, he's just such a lovely man, and so smart. And his mama loves him so much. Holly.
Oh yes, Dr. Thompson, I owe you another visit on the couch. This is the book, and Linda's going to be at 1 o'clock over at Threads signing this, and so many people want to say hello and thank you to you.
Thank you. And by the way, you know, I never wanted to be accused of capitalizing on my relationship with Elvis, or, you know, exploiting it. So I did wait 40 years until after his passing to write this book, and I donated like 90% of the proceeds to St. Jude's Hospital here in Memphis. Woo! You know, but they could use the money more than I. And it wasn't a big money maker anyway, but that St. Jude got my check.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. Linda Thompson, everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks for being Elvis fans.